What's up, guys? Welcome to Invest Iowa. Again, we're talking about investing, and today we have a very lucky guest that happens to be in this podcast. He's so fortunate to be here today. He has a happy face today, and he's gonna teach us more about home inspection. So, spoilers. If you don't want to lose money in the long term, you should get a home inspection, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So that's the call of action. Do not buy a house without a home inspection. You'll pay the price later on. I don't know if that specifically will apply to everyone, but I know that once you know that you can get a home inspection, you never stop getting one. So without further ado, let me introduce Matt. Matt is the owner of Forever Homes Inspection. Right, and he does multiple jobs all over the Des Moines area, Des Moines Metro.
That's right.
So thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Sebastian.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with a couple of questions about your background. How does home inspection knock the door on your life?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I got started in my career back in Ohio. Been probably about 15, 16 years ago. I was a transportation manager for a small trucking company. Had some trucks and trailers that I managed. And I really enjoyed that. I got my bachelor's in logistics management. Thought I'd be in that industry forever and promptly left it and never went back. So good use of that. Good use of that money. Kind of bounced around a little bit, and a company moved me out here into Des Moines in 2013 to manage a distribution terminal down in West Des Moines. And I was there for a few years managing that. And then I left there, went to a small construction company, and then most recently a heavy equipment dealership. I was the branch manager for this heavy equipment dealership, cranes and excavators, things like that. And, I always had that entrepreneurial bug. I really wanted to do something.
The virus.
Yeah, exactly. I just didn't know what it was. And my wife finally said to me a few years ago, she goes, look, you got to do something or shut up about it. She's like, you're always talking about it. You're always talking about wanting to work for yourself. She's like, find something and do it or stop complaining. And I said, okay, yeah, that's fair. That's very fair.
Especially when it comes from your wife.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it was pointing out a failure of mine to take action, right? And so I started looking around different industries, something that I could do on the side, because I knew that I couldn't just leave my full-time job and just start doing something immediately. I needed to pull the boat closer to shore first. And I found home inspections as an industry, started doing some research, found Iowa's very, very lax requirements, meaning there are none. There's no oversight, there's no licensing, there's no certification requirements. You can just hang your shingle and say, I'm a home inspector. And that's not how I like to do things. So I spent several months doing research, figuring out how I would go about being a home inspector. I went and got certified through two different companies, one called ICA, the other one's called Internaci. Internaci is the largest home inspection certification company in the world. Very well recognized by everybody in the industry. So I went and got certified through both of those companies, and I started another home inspection business, not this one, called Hire Inspection Services, which doesn't really exist anymore. It's not really there. And started doing home inspections just on the side. And a couple of months into it, we were talking to the owner of this software company that does our reports, our home inspection reports. And he said, would you guys like a mentor in the industry, which is kind of hard to come by? And I said, my wife and I said, yeah, absolutely. We'd love to get some mentoring and figure out how to do this even better. And they hooked us up with our business partners, Britt and Lance Kaufman out of Oklahoma. And a couple months into that, the four of us came up with the plan to bring the two companies together. So that's how we ended up with Forever Home Inspection. The four of us own it together and run it together, and we have the branch down in Tulsa and the branch here in Iowa.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How long did that take?
A shockingly short amount of time.
Really?
I mean, you're talking about from like conception to inception?
Well, no, probably. Okay, let's talk about
or conception to implementation, I should say.
when did that guy approach you and said, "Would you like mentoring?"
Oh, that would have been, shoot, 2020, late 2020. And we pulled the trigger early 2021.
Early 2020. So
couple
you
months.
started when it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was just a couple
Yeah.
months. Yeah,
That's
that's pretty quick.
So what's a home inspection?
What is a home inspection?
I don't even know what a home inspection is, and I'm already promoting it.
So a home inspection is a non-invasive look at the home. And when I say non-invasive, I'm not knocking holes in the wall. I'm not tearing up floor tiles or tearing down ceiling tiles. I'm not pulling things apart to look inside, right? So we do a little bit of that in that we'll take a electrical panel cover off, or we'll take a furnace cover off, but I'm not going to go further. I'm not going to take things apart. So the reason that's important is a home inspector is going to come into a home and he's going to look around. He's going to should spend a decent amount of time looking around, testing outlets, testing fans, lights, opening doors, checking the guts of the home. You know, we're going to look at the foundation. We're going to look at the subfloor in the basement as much as we can. If there's a crawl space, going down in the crawl space, looking at what's underneath there, looking at the plumbing. So we're looking at a lot of parts of the home that the buyer might not look at when he's just touring it, because when the majority of our home inspections are for residential purchases, right? Not necessarily for investors. So you have to put yourself in the shoes of a first-time home buyer, maybe a second-time home buyer or whatever. And they're looking at that home for the first time for, 30 minutes? That's all, that's all you get. You get a 30-minute tour of the home, and you're expected to make one of the largest decisions of your life based on a 30-minute tour.
Right.
And so you pay a guy like me to come in and spend an actual couple hours in the home, going through the nitty-gritty, going through the details that you don't get to see, going up in the attic and looking at all that. We look for safety and functionality. Is whatever it is I'm looking at, doing what it should be doing and doing it safely. Those are two big items that we look at.
Do home inspectors have a national? Is there a guideline to what's required by the state and what's required?
Every state's different.
Okay.
So in Oklahoma, our guys down in Oklahoma are required to be licensed by the state. So the state set forth a set of guidelines that said you have to meet these standards in training and education. You have to go pass an exam. It's called National Home Inspectors Exam. So all of our guys are required to do that. Then they can get licensed by the state, and the state has a bunch of other requirements as far as like insurance and all that stuff they have to carry. In Iowa, since there is nothing, like I said, anybody can do it, and it's really kind of wild, wild westy. And I don't prefer that. I mean, it was nice to get into the business that way because it was really easy. But I think it can create some issues because you have guys running around who don't really know what they're talking about. But as far as nationally, there's nothing nationally.
There's nothing that. Okay, federal, nothing.
No.
Nothing.
No, we'll keep it that way. I'm okay with that.
You're okay with it?
Yeah.
When you talk about first-time buyers being your main customer, what do they look at that you don't think is necessary? What goes through the mind of a first-time buyer?
They're looking at the aesthetics, right? They're coming in and saying, oh, I like the shutters on the front of the house, or I like the paint of the living room, or I like the carpet color. I mean, these are all things that can be changed. And people need to not get hung up on that kind of stuff. You need to look at what it could be, not what it is. What do you want it to be, right? You can come into a home and do a complete paint job relatively quickly, relatively cheaply. So don't focus on those aesthetics. Look at the home as a whole and say, this is a major investment. Because even if it is a first-time home buyer, it's still an investment, right?
Yeah.
Everybody who owns a home should be an investor in their mind. And they say, okay, I'm going to buy this house for $275,000, but I need a new roof. That's going to be, $10,000. Or I'm going to need foundation repairs. That could be 15, 20 grand, who knows? And look at the investment as a whole. Even that first time you go in to look at it, you don't need to wait for a home inspector to tell you some of those things. You can figure that stuff out on your own.
Right. What are the main things that affect a house in regards to safety?
Safety?
Yes. Because you said that that's what you look at, safety and
functionality.
functionality.
Yeah.
Okay.
Electrical is going to be a big one, especially on older homes.
Okay.
So if you're looking at, say, a pre-19, let's say 1975, you're looking at something built in the 60s, you might have old, outdated breaker boxes that don't meet modern standards. They might not be grounded. So if it's an ungrounded outlet, that electricity has nowhere to go. If there's a power surge, there's nowhere for the electricity to go quickly. So it's going to find the quickest ground path, right? It's going to find the quickest path to ground. And if that's you plugging something in at that moment, you might be the quickest path to ground.
Right.
But if it's a grounded system, then the idea is that it's going to make its way to the ground safely and quickly. So that might be something. And a quick way to tell is, does it have two-prong outlets? So if the outlets on the wall only have two prongs, it's not grounded. It's got to have three. If it's three-prong, it could just be updated outlets and still being ungrounded. And that's where I come in, because I come in and I
because
test them
you
all.
take it out.
Yeah. Oh, I don't take them out, but I have a tester. I have an outlet tester, and I test every single outlet in the home that I can.
So that's a no for home inspection. So if I hire you to inspect a home and then they're not grounded, is that a big deal, or is that something that can be fixable easily?
It just depends on you. It depends on what you're willing to take on.
Okay.
So if you're willing to take on a home that's ungrounded, then go for it. Is it an immediate danger every time you plug in you're unsafe and you could die? Probably not. That's probably not the right way to look at it. It's a safety issue for sure, but it's not. It's been like that for 50 plus years, right?
Right.
So you got to put these things in context and be like, okay, I love the house. It's everything we want. It's the right price. It's in the right area. Yada yada yada. Meets all these standards. Am I okay with the fact that it's not grounded? And now I'm gonna, maybe in 5 years, or maybe 5 months, or in 5 weeks, I'm gonna update the electrical system, and that's gonna cost me $7,000 or $10,000 or whatever it costs. And it just comes down to what you're willing to deal with.
Right. Okay. So electrical. What other?
Another big one would be like gas. Does it have gas furnace, gas fireplace, gas stoves, and are there leaks? I find leaks a lot, even small ones. I have a gas sniffer. It's a little tool that I use, and I test around unions and things like that. If I smell something, and then if there's a gas leak, I'll report it to the seller's agent right away, and they can get someone out to fix it right away. People don't realize there are gas leaks all the time. Even though gas smells, it can go unnoticed for quite some time.
Gas. When you talk about gas, you mean what we use to warm things up around the house?
Gas furnace, gas stove, gas fireplace, things like that. Natural gas.
Okay, so electrical, gas, what other?
Another big one would be exhaust. So your gas furnace is going to have an exhaust, right? Your gas water heater is going to have exhaust. Gas fireplace will have a flue that goes outside, vents out the exhaust fumes.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. One time I was in a condo, so very similar to an apartment, just you own it instead of rent it, right? And was it second floor? I think it was second floor unit. And I went into the utility room, just a closet that had the water heater and the furnace in it. And the water heater, as I was inspecting it, I looked at the flue. So it's a vent, right, that comes up and it goes over and then up again and out wherever they terminate it, the roof or the sidewall. I don't know. And it's completely disconnected. It's not even a little bit connected. The flue, the vent is completely disconnected. So every time that water heater is heating up water, all of those noxious fumes are just dumping into the condo. They're just spilling out into the living space. And the homeowner, the people who are selling the house, had 2 little girls. I mean, little girls. And so, obviously I'm going to call that out on the report, but it's also an immediate safety hazard because those fumes can be deadly. And so I, contacted the selling agent. She had the seller come home right away. I showed the seller what I was talking about. And she's like, well, what do I do? I said, you need to call, a contractor, probably a plumbing contractor, and have them come out. And because, I can reconnect it. I can just stick the flue back together, but it needs to be actually connected properly. It came apart for a reason. Maybe maybe it's no longer fitting right or something broke, so it needs repairs.
Is that something that you need to be licensed to do?
Yeah, you really should be. You know, I always recommend licensed contractors when licenses are required. So electrical, you need to be licensed. Plumbing, you need to be licensed. Structural engineers need to be licensed. You know, things like that. If it's like a deck, let's say you're doing deck repairs, I'll say a qualified contractor or a competent contractor or something along those lines. But something like that, you definitely want a licensed contractor.
What about structural damage? Like, do you take a look at that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, if it's obvious, I'm not a licensed structural engineer. So if somebody would ask me, hey, is this a load-bearing wall? Can I tear this wall out? I don't know. I mean, I might know, but as far as it goes, I don't know, because that's not my job as a home inspector.
So you're not an engineer. You said you need to be an engineer for that?
Well, it depends on what you're wanting. So if I go down into a basement and I see an older home with walls that are starting to bow in or cracked and things like that, I'm going to call that out, obviously. I'm going to say, hey, your walls are starting to come in, or there's these cracks and they are vertical or they're horizontal or they're diagonal, whatever the case may be. And then I'm going to say, you should have a structural engineer look at it. I can call it out as a defect, obviously, but what I can't do as a home inspector and not a structural engineer is say what kind of repairs need to be made, or even if repairs need to be made at that moment. I've called out things like that before. It was for a friend's dad buying a house, dad and mom, and I said, these walls are really bowing in. They were looking pretty bad. I said, you really should have a structural engineer come out and tell you what needs to be done. They had the engineer come out and he goes, yeah, they're bowing in. Let's give it 5 years and I'll come back. I was pretty surprised. I genuinely was. I was very surprised. I thought for sure it'd be, yep, we need to get some wall bracing in and, you know, things like that. There's a huge tree in the side yard. I figured the tree was pushing in on it. But he did. He said he was fine with it he said give it 5 years.
So if that wall was to just break and then fall into someone, could he be legally abide to that?
Oh, I don't know. I would assume there would be some liability there. That's why you need a licensed engineer, you know, because they're going to be insured and all that stuff. So you don't just have Billy Bob down the street take a look at it.
Right. What else do you do for home inspection?
So we get up on the roof. We'll go up on the roof.
Well, I've seen a couple of videos of that.
Yep, I post a lot of videos on the roof. I could probably do a year-long video series every day posting something just on the roof, because there's so many different parts of a roof and so many different kinds of defects and situations that people don't have any idea about. Nobody looks up, right? They look at the house and they don't go, oh, look at that roof.
And they usually can't see because it's hidden.
Might not be able to see anything. Yeah, absolutely.
Is this a main factor because we get winter and comes in and it's so hard?
Yeah, well, I mean, just rain in general.
Is it different from, I don't know, Oklahoma?
Not the roof so much. You might have differences in more dry, arid areas like, say, you know, New Mexico, Arizona, something like that. They're going to have a lot more flat roofs because they don't get the rainfall that we do. But not really between anywhere in the Midwest and where you're going to have that typical seasonal changes. You're going to have pitched roofs, and for the most part.
So in those hours, you check the structural, the electrical, the exhausts.
Top to bottom of the house. I mean, really, it's top to bottom. Anywhere we can get into, we're getting into. You know, I've had attic hatches that are, you know, so small that just my head can fit through, and so my head fits through. You know, and I get about this deep, and I just kind of, I mean, if that's all I can do, that's all I can do. Or maybe a crawl space that's so narrow that I can only get about 2 feet into it. So I get 2 feet into it, and then just hold my camera around. I mean, do whatever I can do. Yeah. But yeah, top to bottom.
So I'm sure. How long have you been doing this?
So our company's been around for 6 years. This would be ending my second year.
In your second year.
Yeah.
So in all those years that you've been around home inspections, what are some stories that are very remarkable?
I mean, geez Louise. I did one. Yeah.
As long as you're not specific,
Yeah, I do need to be relatively vague, obviously.
Yeah.
I did one recently down southern Iowa, and they had the entire floor removed in the main floor. It was a crawl space home, and they had the whole floor removed, so it's just floor joists going across. And I had to, as I just walked through the home, every step was on a floor joist. You know, no carpet, no wood flooring, just floor joists. And then as I stepped on one of them, it broke out from underneath me. Thankfully, I caught myself, didn't fall down, and get hurt. And it was an absolute disaster of a subfloor. I mean, they had to tear it out because the floors were sloping probably that much. And yeah, it was pretty bad. I've had other ones where I did one about a year and a half ago where the home was owned by the U.S. Marshals. And it was all boarded up. It was middle of winter. I mean, it was like -10 that day, and there was no power. So there's no heat. There's no lights. So the entire inspection was, head to toe winter gear and flashlights and a headlamp, and very nervous about who's in that home because it was boarded up and the door was kicked in.
Yeah.
And so I texted the wife and I said, "Hey, if I don't make it out of this one,
I like
the cops,
it.
And bullet holes in the walls." So yeah, that was a fun one.
Do you ever do foreclosures?
Like inspecting for the bank?
Foreclosures in general.
Yeah, I mean, I've inspected homes that people were buying that were foreclosures. I've not inspected on the bank side of the foreclosure because I think they'll do inspections when they take possession of them. I just haven't done it yet. But I've inspected homes that someone was buying that was a foreclosure. Those can be, I haven't seen anything yet, but you hear stories about those where people pour, cement down the toilets, things like that. So.
Why would they do that?
They're angry that they lost their home.
Oh.
Yeah.
And they
not recommended. Don't do that. Bad idea.
So for the bank, so it's home inspectors that go and check the foreclosed properties, not appraisals?
I mean, like I said, I haven't done those for the bank, so I don't know. But I know of inspectors that have been hired by banks to go in and check the foreclosures.
Do you own your own house?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, that sounds stupid. Do you own your own house?
Okay. We rented the last house we lived in.
Oh, yeah. Fair enough. Is it easier for you now to come and say, do you ever, when you bought your first property, do you have to disclose that you're a home inspector? No, that's not something you have to do.
In Iowa, no, because there's no oversight, no regulations. I don't know about other places. I'm sure there are some places you have to disclose.
So when you bought your house, did you spend 3 hours looking at everything?
Oh yeah. Heck yeah. I didn't do anything different than I did for anybody else's house. I mean, I treated it like a regular home inspection. I spent the same amount of time I did anywhere else. And I did a sewer scope like I did everywhere else. And, I found a lot of stuff like I do everywhere else. And it's a new construction home too. It's brand new. And I still find a lot of stuff.
So I guess from your position, you get this report. And now you go to the seller and you're like, hey, look, this is what's wrong with come down on the price. Is it easier to negotiate that way? Do you have a...
So in new construction, you don't really negotiate that way. You take a home inspection report, and we used a realtor, and so my realtor took the report and just gave it to him and said, hey, here's the things that we found, fix it, make it right. On a resale where you're buying a used home, then you would be able to negotiate based on that. Yeah, you would take that report and say it needs a new roof, or it needs, maybe let's say the foundation is broken and needs to be reinforced. Well, those are pretty expensive. Or let's say on the sewer scope, you find a cracked and maybe root-filled sewer line, so that needs to get fixed. Sewer repairs can be $15,000, $20,000. They add up very quickly. And so you would definitely want to use that as a negotiating tool and say, hey, you're going to have to come down on the price, or you're going to have to fix it before we buy it, or, whatever the case may be. But I don't get involved in the negotiations. That's not
Right.
a home inspector's job.
But it'll soon be once you become an investor yourself, right?
Once I start investing in places, maybe, I suppose.
When do you think that's gonna take place?
I don't know, and I don't know if we'll buy residential, or I don't know if we'll do rental properties. I think we're looking at more commercial stuff down the line. I've actually been really interested in buying car washes.
Car washes.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just talking to this one guy that mentioned that car washes, all these companies are creating so many car washes, and because they're always busy, they create them, they get them running, and then they sell them, and that's their business model.
Sure.
I mean, he also mentioned that at some point there's going to be so many that they're not going to be as profitable as.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't be looking at car washes in major metropolitan areas. I would look at car washes in smaller towns, a little 1 or 2 bay car washes in small towns.
You're looking at Eddie right now?
No, not yet. We just
Not yet.
bought the house a month ago. We're not.
Oh, just bought a house?
Yeah. We just bought the house last month.
Your first deal, huh?
Oh no, I've owned homes before.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that doesn't do you any good for home inspections.
Well, it was good experience. I mean, that's my first new construction that I bought. So
New construction.
it was interesting.
Yeah. So they just fix everything right away.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Do you expect this new constructions to be well done, or do they still have problems?
They still have problems.
How so?
People have to remember homes are built by fallible, broken people. So Jimmy's in there having a bad day, and he's laying tile, and he puts in a broken piece of tile because he didn't want to take the time to go find a good one. Or, Tommy's doing the electrical work, and he forgot to, tighten down the grounding fitting on the UFER, something like that. I mean, it happens. People are fallible. They make mistakes, or they're lazy, or they're just bad at it. I mean, there's just people that are just bad at their job too. And so you're going to find stuff. I found things on the cheapest new constructions. I found things on the very, very, very expensive new construction. I found a lot of things. And my home, middle of the road, not a very nice house, but not a cheap house either. I found a fair amount of things, and the builder took care of it, and I'm very happy. So, yeah.
What do you recommend for home inspection? So, let's say somebody's not in a position where they could afford a home inspection, which I know it sounds ridiculous, but let's just hypothetically say this, right? What should somebody look at? Like main keys, main factors.
If this is going to sound kind of harsh,
Yeah.
if you're not in a position to pay for a home inspection, you're probably not in a position to buy a house. If you can't afford a $450 home inspection, how are you paying for a $400,000 house?
Okay, let me rephrase this because I don't think I'm targeting the question in a way that can be easily solved. So oh man, you put me in the spot because it's hard. I'm just trying
So
to
basically, if someone wants to skip a home inspection, what should they look out
Why
for?
should they look for it? Yes, if somebody wants to save a couple $100, what should they look for?
They shouldn't.
They should.
You don't have if you're buying a resale and you don't have a home inspection done, what are you going to use to negotiate defects? So you say, I noticed that this was broken and I want it fixed. Yeah, maybe if the seller goes for it, but that's why you have an inspection period and you have an inspection addendum to make requests is from an inspection, because I'm an unbiased third party. I don't care if you buy the house or not. At the end of the day, I really don't. It means very little to me. I care about people, obviously, but I don't lose any sleep if someone doesn't buy a house.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So you want an unbiased third party to come in to say, these are the things that are wrong with the house. It's just because it's inherently true, right? I mean, it's not, I want these things to be wrong so that person can get a better deal. I just come in and I just speak the truth. This is what's wrong with the house. So I wouldn't skip it, and I wouldn't encourage anyone to find ways around it. And that's very self-serving because I make money off of it.
Right.
But this would be true for Iowa, Oklahoma, or California, or Florida, or wherever. So I'm not making money in those states. It's still true there that you need an unbiased third party to come in and make observations about the house. You just need it.
Okay, I guess we can't argue otherwise. Like, I mean, it does make sense. So.
Now, what I would say is, if you're let's say you're the type of person who says, I don't want to buy a house that needs electrical upgrades. Okay, but for whatever reason, just not willing to deal with it. I don't have the money to spend on it, or I'm scared of that, or whatever the case may be. Then there are things to look out for sure. Look at the electrical panel, find the electrical panel, and don't take the panel cover off or anything, but just look at it. Is it a newer panel? Is it an old panel? You could take a picture of it and look it up online later to see how old it is. And, there's information you can find on when you open the door. There's information on inside the panel. And that could tell you, okay, or like I said earlier, there's 2-prong outlets everywhere. You could look at that and say, well, obviously it's an ungrounded home. I don't want to deal with electrical upgrades, so let's move on to another one, right? Something along those lines. I mean, that would be a place to start. I would make those decisions before you get to the offering position.
Right.
And say, I don't want to deal with a new roof. I don't even want to negotiate for a new roof. Well, then look at the roof. Stand in the street and look up at the roof and look at it and just say, does that look like a good roof or not? I think anybody can look at a roof and that's in really bad shape and just make an observation that, oh, that roof's in bad shape. I don't want to deal with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think it will be fair to say that you could be making the buyer money by giving him the key points to then negotiate the price better with the seller.
Absolutely. Since we started doing sewer scopes early this year, March of this year, we started doing sewer scopes. I don't even know. It's kind of impossible to say, but just off the ones I am confident, I think I've saved clients well over $200,000 in repairs, because I know of so many, especially in the Des Moines area. We have a material called Orangeburg that's really prevalent. It's becoming less and less prevalent, but it was used quite a bit in the late 40s to early 60s, and it tends to collapse and fail. 99 out of 100, it collapses and fails. And so that's one reason they want a sewer scope. Oh, it was built in 1958. It's in this area of town. I should get it sewer scoped. So I come in, I do the scope, and I say, yep, you've got failed sewer line. Now they can take that information to the seller and say, well, I took this information to a drainage contractor. He told me it's going to be $15,000 to fix it. What do you guys want to do? You going to pay for it? We're going to take it off the price, and you guys now you negotiate that, right? I've had several clients tell me later, hey, that sewer scope saved me $10,000, $15,000. I've seen it up to $24,000 so far. That's the highest I've seen is 24.
So sewer scopes, very important.
Very important.
Would you say more than that's what you do the most?
No, we do more home inspections than sewer scopes. I would say we're doing sewer scopes on about 60 to 70% of our inspections.
Okay, but we haven't touched this, and I think it's crucial. I wanted to. Did your business get affected by COVID?
Well, I mean, all businesses did for a little bit there, right? I mean, it was everything getting shut down during the initial uncertainty. But no, after things started to move again, no, we really didn't. I mean, I would say it got affected positively. I mean, sales went up. Homes were moving a lot.
But if houses were contracts were just being signed without a home inspection, like the houses.
So that was more.
If you require a home inspection back then, you will need.
Yeah.
You probably won't get the house, right?
More towards the end of the COVID, disaster. There was a lot of homes being sold without a home inspection. That's very true. I think nationwide, it was somewhere around 30% of home deals were going through without a home inspection, like 33, 35, something like that. So it's hard for me to say because I started right at the beginning of COVID, basically. So I didn't have something to compare it to before that. Now the Forever Home Inspection existed before that in Oklahoma, so I could look at Oklahoma numbers and see that there was a bit of a drop, but at the same time, we brought on more inspectors. So we had we had more people working, but maybe doing fewer inspections per person, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So the numbers were a little skewed in a way. But no, we grew as a whole. We grew through COVID quite a bit. So yeah, there was an effect. It was
good. It was
good.
Still growing.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think you had a lot of people that were buying homes sight unseen, and so then you get a home inspection because you haven't even seen the place. So there might have been some loss in the overall numbers, but I think other ways people were trusting home inspectors because they were buying it without even going to look at it, and it was a crazy period.
Okay. From a perspective that is very biased, like yours, what is somebody looking for when we're trying to get a right home inspector? Like, what should we look for on a good home inspector? What should he has? What should he have that is irreplaceable?
I would say that's an interesting one. What should he have that's irreplaceable? I would say that you can't just take the cheapest guy in town. This is, like I said earlier, this is the biggest investment of your life typically, right? It's typically the biggest purchase of your life is a home, and you don't want to trust that to the guy who's running a big sale. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense to me to go, well, I'm going to buy this $800,000 house, but I'm going to skimp on the home inspection and only pay $275 or whatever the case may be. So I don't know if there's something irreplaceable he has to have, because I think it'd be disingenuous of me to say that he has to be certified by, say, Internachi or ASHI or somebody like that, because there's a lot of old timers have been doing this for a long time, and maybe they're not certified, but they know what the heck they're talking about. I would say talk to your real estate agent and find out who they like, get a few trusted guys from your agent, and then do your research. Read your Google reviews, look at their website, read their website. The website should be informative, right? The website should be very clear and transparent. I like transparent pricing up front. That's what we do. We have 3 price categories based on square footage. It's 3 categories of pricing. That's it. It's not, oh, well, it's this age, so we add another $20 for the age and all that stuff. No, it's just pricing. So, or it's just the square footage. So, transparency, being upfront, good Google reviews, trusted by your agent, that kind of stuff.
Reputation.
Yeah, reputation.
So how's your relationship with your agents?
That's really good. I enjoy the agents that work with me, and I get pushback from the occasional agent, but it's mostly just because they might not necessarily agree with something I point out, but that's fine. They can not agree.
Right. You're doing your
due
due diligence.
Okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any recommendations for sellers? Should they get a home inspection before they sell their house? Because now they have to disclose that, right?
There's 2 schools of thoughts on that. Yeah, for sure. One would be having a home inspection could point out things that you're going to fix, right? Because it's going to get pointed out anyway. Why not know ahead of time? And especially during the COVID craziness where homes were selling overpriced and no negotiations and all that, you could basically go, hey, I know this stuff's wrong, but I don't care. I'm not doing anything about it. So in that case, what was the point of getting a home inspection?
Right.
It just really wasn't. But now that things are starting to balance out, you can get a home inspection before you put it on the market and say, oh, I need to update like these 6 or 7 items. That'll make it easier when it comes time for the actual negotiations. Those things will all be taken care of.
Does the seller have to disclose that he got a home inspection, the things that were wrong and how they were fixed?
So every state's going to have its own, laws and things about what you have to disclose. I'm not an expert by any means on that.
This is not legal advice.
This is not legal
This is just
advice.
a conversation.
But I would disclose what you know. I would not hide anything. Because here's the thing, if you hide something, my job is to find it. And I come in and I look at I look around the room and I see a patch of new paint on the ceiling. My alarm bells instantly go off. Why is that there?
Yeah.
And now, I'm really honed in on that and finding out what's going on. So, it's better as a seller just to be honest and upfront and disclose things. You talk to your realtor will tell you what you have to disclose and what you don't have to disclose. That's, there's legal requirements there, but that's my opinion.
What percentage of your home inspections come from sellers?
Almost none.
None.
Yeah, it very rarely happens.
Any commercial?
We have a separate commercial business called Focus Building Inspections.
Okay, and that's for, what's the difference between commercial inspections and residential inspection?
So if you're talking, like, the obvious thing would be business buildings, warehouses, things like that, obviously. But in the housing side of things, if it has only 4 doors or less, it can be considered residential. If it has 5 doors or more, it's considered commercial. So like a 50-unit apartment building would be in a commercial property inspection, but a duplex you could do that as just a residential inspection.
Up to 4plex.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
But you don't need license for any of that, so.
No, on commercial side, there's no requirements anywhere in the country for commercial property inspections.
What is so different about inspecting a residential and commercial?
Why does the government treat it differently? I couldn't tell you that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I'm guessing most of the inspections come also from the buyer side.
Yeah, it'd be the same deal. Yep. I would say probably you're much less likely to see that on a commercial property that a seller would pay for someone to come in and on a commercial property. Now we do some of the inspections we do on the commercial side are like almost preventative maintenance inspections, going in and looking at a place from time to time just to tell the sellers what's wrong with their building so they can fix those things. We do that.
How do you get your leads?
For
home inspections, like I guess you run it like a business. You don't need licensing, so technically you can advertise all of these things without having that license out, like real estate agents here in the state of Iowa do, that they have to put all this labels right in the description. You don't have to do that, right?
Yeah, because there's no oversight on that. Most of our leads come from realtors. Most of our leads are coming from a realtor giving a client a packet of information saying, this is how you're going to go about purchasing your home. And typically in that packet, they'll have a few recommendations for home inspectors. Not just, I never expect anybody to go, only use Forever Home Inspection. They're the only ones. Now they need to do, what their license requires, which is to hand out a few options.
Okay. I don't think I have any more questions. You made it pretty clear that you need a home inspection before you buy a house.
And a sewer scope.
No conversation about it.
There isn't, and I would point out the sewer scope thing too. That is not just for old homes with collapsing lines. My brand new house had 1.5 inches of dirt and gravel in the sewer lateral, and that it would not have found if it wasn't for me doing a sewer scope. And that would have 100% caused a clog later on down the road. And it probably would have happened right after the warranty was up, too.
Oh.
So
you just saved yourself $100.
Oh, I mean, way more than that. I mean, a cleaning can be anywhere from $500 to a couple $1,000.
All right, that's pretty good. Anything else is worthy of mentioning?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you should, trust the people that you hire, right? I mean, if you bring a home inspector in, trust him to do his job. I don't mind people following me around, but it happens all the time. And I don't mind people questioning me either. That's fine. But just trust that we know what we're talking about. Sometimes people bring their dads and their uncles, and we get a little pushback, and that's fine. But we're the ones that are getting trained and certified, and done hundreds of these things. So just trust your home inspector.
Trust your home inspector.
Yeah.
Well, could you point out to the camera, how can we contact?
So you can find us at foreverhomeinspection.com, on Facebook under Forever Home Inspection. I won't put phone numbers on there because there's 2 different numbers for Iowa and Oklahoma, and to be honest with you, I don't remember them both. But they're on our websites, and we're on Instagram. I don't think we're on anything else.
I know that the best way to get a hold of him is going to his Facebook page and being his friend. He posts everything that he does on a daily. I have a blast watching his videos because it explains in detail things that you're like, that doesn't even matter. I was just watching your video on the roof, and there was
The kick out flashing.
Was it?
Was it kick out flash? It was the one I posted just the other day.
Yeah, just the other day you were saying that the water needs to not hit the siding, otherwise it'll start damaging it. It's just little details that makes so much sense, but nobody's gonna figure it out unless somebody expert comes and takes a look at them. Easiest way to find him is on Facebook. And Matt, I appreciate a lot your time, and it was very informative. I learned a lot about home inspections, and I know that once I become a realtor, I will be giving you a couple of jobs.
It's all good, man. Appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right, without further ado, I know I said that a couple times, so let's do that differently. Yeah, thanks for watching. I mean, if you made it this far, you probably care about home inspections. And if you're watching this, props to you. You learn a lot about home inspections. Call him directly if you want any more information, and I'll see you in the next one. You're making this more difficult than it is.